This video provides you with the steps to record audio using the Zoom LiveTrak L-8 8-channel digital mixer and recorder. The L-8 can be used as a USB audio interface with a computer running a DAW, as a standalone recorder, or as both simultaneously. While this video specifically addresses recording to Adobe Audition, the steps for recording to another DAW, such as Apple Pro Logic, Avid Pro Tools, Audacity, Persona Studio One, BandLab, etc., are relatively the same. Before using the L-8 as a USB interface with your computer, make sure that its driver is installed on the computer and that the L-8 has the most current firmware installed. The driver and firmware can be downloaded from the manufacturer's website. The L-8's firmware downloads as a compressed zip file. After unzipping the file, follow the instructions in the L-8 Firmware Update Guide PDF file. You'll need an SD card to transfer the firmware file to the L-8 unit. The remainder of this video is split into two parts. The first part is about the L-8 unit itself, its layout, and then setting up to record, saving settings as a scene and recalling a scene, and recording to and playing back from an SD card. The second part is about setting up and recording in Adobe Audition, using the L-8 as an audio interface. Let's get familiar with the layout of the L-8 itself. The back of the unit has the power switch and the SD card slot, which has a dust cover. Turn the unit over, and on the underside you'll find the micro USB port. This USB connection powers the unit and also serves as a pass-through of data between the L-8 and the computer when recording. If you're using the L-8 as a standalone recorder, it can be powered either by plugging it into an AC outlet with the included AC adapter, or with 4 AA batteries. According to the manufacturer, you can get about 1.5 hours of recording time using alkaline batteries, and about 5 hours of recording time using lithium batteries. Let's return to the front of the L-8, the business end. The top contains the input and output connections. The L-8 supports up to 8 inputs, 6 mono combo jacks for channels 1 through 6, and 2 stereo 1/4-inch jacks for channels 7 and 8. It also supports up to 6 outputs, 2 mono XLR jacks for left-right speakers, and up to 4 stereo headphones using 1/4-inch stereo plugs. At the bottom right corner of the L-8, you'll find the 4 mode buttons: Mixer, Effect, Scene, and Recorder. Selecting a mode determines the functions that are available in the function buttons, which are just above the mode buttons. Above the function buttons are the display screen and dial. Depending on the selected mode and function, the display provides you with status, messages, or additional settings that you can change. Use the small dial below the display to scroll through options. Pushing the dial selects the highlighted option on the display. You'll use these when saving and recalling a scene. The remainder of the unit is the mixing console, and we'll go through these when we set up the L-8 to record. Now, let's prep the L-8 for recording. First, make sure it's turned on, and insert an SD card into the SD card slot if you plan on recording to one. When you insert the SD card, the display will prompt you about project data. Use the dial to scroll to Save to SD. Then, press and release the dial to select it. By default, the recorder mode button should be lit, indicating that it's the currently selected mode. If it isn't selected, press the recorder mode button so that it is lit. Next, push the Setting function button. Use the dial to scroll down to System in the display. Press and release the dial to select System. Use the dial again to select Sample Rate in the display. Press and release the dial to select it. Use the dial to select 48 kHz. When prompted, "Are you sure?" use the dial to select yes. Now, press the recorder mode button so that all function buttons are available again. Next, select the mixer mode button so that it's lit. Push the audio IF function button. Use the dial to select PC Mac. This bridges the L8 to the computer and allows simultaneous recording to the computer and the onboard SD card. When prompted, "Are you sure?" use the dial to select yes. All function buttons become available again. Unless you do a factory reset of the L8, you won't need to set the sample rate or audio interface again. Before connecting the microphones, make sure that the phantom power, the red button labeled 48V below the 6 combo jack inputs, is disabled, which is when it's popped up. I'll explain more about this shortly. For now, connect the microphone cables to the desired channel inputs. If you're using lavalier microphones, make sure that all connections to the transmitters and receivers are secure and that the units are powered on. Now we get into the mixing console part of the L8. With the microphones connected, slide each channel's fader to 0 and set the channel's gain dials to the 12 o'clock position, which is the 6th marking that is halfway between the +10 and +54 dial labels. This is a baseline setting that you can adjust when you do a sound check. Slide the master channel fader to 0 on its left side scale. Then, connect your monitoring headphones into the monitor out master jack, using an adapter as necessary, and set its volume dial to the 12 o'clock position, which is the 6th marking that is halfway between the 0 and 10 dial labels. Let's talk a little bit more about using phantom power, that red button labeled 48V below the 6 combo jack inputs. Before plugging in any microphone cable, make sure that the phantom power is disabled, that the red button is in the popped up position. Condenser microphones like this SE Electronics SE8 contain what are called active electronics that need an external power source to function. Dynamic microphones like this Shure SM58 are considered passive microphones and don't require phantom power. Wireless lavalier microphones like this Rode Wireless Go 2, which I'm using to record this video, are dynamic microphones that don't need phantom power. In fact, the lav mic itself isn't directly connected to the L8. Only the lav's receiver is. Modern dynamic mics are typically built to reject any additional power. So if you plug in a dynamic mic and turn on phantom power, it won't harm the mic. However, if phantom power isn't needed but is on, it may introduce a slight hum on recorded channels. Therefore, it's best to keep phantom power off unless a mic or input needs it. You shouldn't mix condenser mics and dynamic mics with the L8 because phantom power cannot be toggled for individual input channels. You either have to have phantom on or off for all 6 inputs. If you're using the L8 as a standalone recorder and not as a USB interface into a DAW, you can skip this part. Channels 7 and 8 are multi-purpose inputs. You select the channel's input by selecting its Input Select button. They can either be used as line inputs for instruments, monitoring from a computer's DAW via USB, or from the L8's built-in sound pad. The sound pad contains preset sound effects that can be triggered by selecting one of its 6 buttons. Useful for things like podcasts, useless when recording location audio. Channel 8 has one additional input select option: connecting an external device such as a smartphone through a 3.5mm stereo mini jack. Like the sound pad, it's useful if you're recording something like a podcast and you have a caller on the phone, but useless when recording location audio. Select either channel 7's or 8's input select button until the USB LED is lit red. You can use either channel to monitor a computer's DAW, and don't need to have both channels set to USB. Then, slide that channel's fader to 0. If you are using the L8 as a USB interface to record to a computer's DAW, let's set up a mix so that you can monitor the DAW's recording. First, press the mixer mode button if it isn't already selected. Then, press the Mix A function button. Not only will the Mix A function button be lit, the display will also show that Mix A is selected. Slide all faders down to infinity, the bottom, including the master fader. Then, slide the channel 7 fader back to 0 to set its level. This allows you to hear only what the DAW is recording. Next, connect your monitoring headphones into the Monitor Out Mix A jack, using an adapter if necessary. Set its volume dial to the 12 o'clock position, which is the 6 marking that is halfway between the 0 and 10 dial labels, and ensure that its switch is in the Mix A position. You can switch between monitoring the computer's DAW and the L8's mix by toggling between the two with the Mix A switch. However, if you switch to master, you'll get both the L8's mix and the DAW's mix with a slight delay between the two. That delay comes from the time it takes the signal to travel from the L8 to the computer and back to the L8. If you're in the same room as what's being recorded, you would also hear the delay between the actors and what's in the headphones. If you're using the L8 as a standalone recorder, connect your monitoring headphones to the 1/4 inch master out master jack. Set the master out master volume dial to the 12 o'clock position. Regardless of what you're monitoring, the headphone volume setting here is a starting point, just like setting the gain dials for the channels. Adjust the volume during a sound check as well as while monitoring the audio to a comfortable listening level. For each channel you plan on recording, confirm its channel strip settings. The channel strip settings are noted in blue on the L8. Press the channel select button. It'll light up orange. Only one channel at a time can be selected. Now, all the settings in the channel strip can be adjusted for that channel. Make sure that the effects dial is set to -infinity so that there are no effects applied to the channel, that the pan dial is set to C so that the channel is panned to the center and not to the left or right, that the high, mid, and low tone dials are all set to 0 for a flat equalization, and that the low cut button is unlit, meaning that it is disabled. Effects are commonly used during live performances. For recording location audio though, effects aren't needed. You would add effects, adjust EQ, pan voices, and reduce or remove rumble in the DAW during post-production. You've just spent time setting up the L8 for recording, and the last thing you want to do is lose those settings. Fortunately, you can save the settings as a scene that can be recalled for future recording sessions. Scenes can be recalled and updated as necessary. To save settings as a scene, first press the Scene Mode button. Next, press the desired function button, 1 through 7, to light that button and select that number as the save location. You can save up to 7 different scenes. Finally, use the dial to select Save in the display. The Scenes function button will flash twice and the display will confirm the scene number. If you change any settings in which there are lighted indicators, such as the fader levels, channel strip, mute buttons, and the channel 7 and 8 input select buttons, the Scenes function button will flash continuously and the display will show Edited for the scene number, letting you know that you have unsaved changes. To save changes and overwrite the previous settings of a scene, first press the flashing function button. Then use the dial to select Save in the display. If you want to save the changes as another scene, simply press a different function button. Then Use the dial again to select Save in the display. That's it. Now there are a few settings that can't be saved to a scene. A channel's gain level, a channel's record play button toggle, and the volume level for headphones. A channel's gain should be adjusted appropriately for each recording session so that the channel signal light doesn't turn red, which indicates clipping. Clipped audio sounds distorted and should be avoided. A channel's record play button should be toggled as necessary for recording and playback if you're recording to an SD card. We'll get to this later in the video. The volume for headphones should be adjusted for each individual's preference and comfort. Let's say that you're going to be recording audio at another video shoot. Remember, there's no need to set up the L8 for recording from scratch, unless the unit has been reset to its factory settings. It's as easy as recalling a scene. When the L8 is powered on, its scene function buttons will be in one of four states: unlit, dimly lit, brightly lit, or brightly lit and flashing. If a function number is unlit, it means that it's a vacant scene, that no settings are saved to that slot. If a function number is dimly lit, it means there's a saved scene in the L8's onboard memory that can be recalled. If a function number is brightly lit, it means that it's the currently selected scene. And if a function number is brightly lit and flashing, it means that it's the currently selected scene and its settings have been modified but not yet saved. To recall a scene, first press the Scene Mode button. Then, select either a dimly lit or a brightly lit function button. Finally, use the dial to select Recall in the display. The selected function button will briefly flash and the display will confirm the selected scene number. The L8's ability to simultaneously record to a computer's DAW and to its onboard SD card provides you with a backup of the audio if the DAW crashes or the DAW file becomes corrupted during recording. This also means you can use the L8 as a standalone recorder, disconnected from a computer. To record to an SD card, make sure that the card is inserted into the L8's SD card slot and that the card is formatted. If the card needs to be formatted, it can be done in the Recorder Settings options using the display screen and dial. Second, arm each channel you want to record by pressing its Record Play button so that it's lit red. Each channel will have its own audio file. You have the option to arm the master channel by pressing its Record Play button so that it's lit red. Recording the master channel provides you with a reference audio file where all the channels that are armed for recording are together in a single mixed channel that has its own file. Third, make sure that the Record Play buttons for channels 7 and 8 are not toggled and remain unlit. This prevents the L8 from recording the DAW monitor. If you're using the L8 as a standalone recorder, this can be skipped. Next, press the Recorder Mode button. Then, press the Record Function button, the function button with the red circle, to light it red, followed by pressing the Play Function button, the function button with the green right-pointing triangle, to light it green. When both are toggled on, the ARM tracks are being recorded to the SD card. When recording is complete, press the Stop Function button, the function button with the orange square. The display shows a brief "Please wait" message while it finalizes the audio files. Pressing the Stop Function button also toggles both the record and play buttons to become unlit, indicating that they are disabled. Quick note, when using the L8 as a standalone recorder, you may want to add markers to the audio file as it's recording. Markers can be used to note where a take starts, extra noises you hear that you don't want in the final output, like lawnmowers or a door closing or a cell phone going off. You know, things like that. To add a marker during recording, press and release the dial below the display screen. A brief message will display like marker 02, and the display screen will keep a tally of how many markers are in that file. Markers are added to each ARM channel's files. If you're using the L8 as a standalone recorder, it's good practice to spot check the recording to make sure you've captured what you need, even though you've been monitoring the audio during the recording session. To playback audio recorded to the SD card, arm each channel you want to listen to by pressing its record play button so that it's lit green. If you also recorded the master channel, do not arm it for playback. If you do, it'll override arming the individual channels for playback. Besides, the master channel is a combination of all recorded channels anyway. Second, press the recorder mode button. Third, press either the previous track or the next track function button to go to the desired track. If a track has markers in it, you'll need to press those buttons to jump through the markers to get to the previous or next track. You can then use the dial to move within the timeline of the selected track. Press the play function button to light it green and hear the playback. To stop playback, press the stop function button. If you're using the L8 to record a backup of the audio while recording to a computer's DAW, it's important to understand that the recording and playback controls on the L8 do not control the DAW. Likewise, the recording and playback controls in the DAW do not control the L8. To record on both, you must start recording on the L8 and in the DAW itself. Adobe Audition is just one of many DAWs on the market. Steps for other DAWs may be similar to what we'll cover here. If you're using a DAW other than Audition, refer to its specific documentation on setting up a USB interface for recording. To set up Audition to interface with the L8, first make sure that the L8 is connected to the computer using its USB cable. Depending on the available ports on your computer, you may need an adapter. For example, my laptop has only USB-C ports, so I need a female end USB-A to a male end USB-C adapter. With the L8 now connected to your computer, open the Audition app. Go to the Edit menu, down to Preferences, and select Audio Hardware. In the Preferences dialog box, make sure these settings are selected. Device class is ASIO. Device is Zoom L-8 ASIO driver. I/O buffer size is 512. And sample rate is 48,000 Hz. The I/O buffer size and sample rate settings are auto-populated by connection to the L8. With those settings selected, select the OK button. Next, you want to create a new multi-track session by selecting the File menu, New, and Multi-track session. In the New Multi-track session dialog box, make sure these settings are selected. Session name should be appropriate to the shoot. Folder location should be in the desired location to save the session. Use the Browse button as needed to navigate to the desired location. Template is either none or a custom created template if one is available. Sample rate is 48,000 Hz. Bit depth is 24 float bits. And mix is stereo. With those settings selected, select the OK button. If you've selected none as the template, Audition defaults to a multi-track session with 6 stereo tracks and 1 mix track that all tracks output to. If a specific template was selected, the number and type of tracks in the session will reflect those template settings. For now, let's just assume that the template is none. For track 1, change the input identified as this right pointing arrow by selecting Default Stereo Input Mono 03M in 1. This maps the Audition track to receive an audio signal from the microphone plugged into channel 1 on the L8. For track 2, you would select 03M in 2, and so on. For each track, leave the output, identified as this left pointing arrow, set to mix. Now, the default track names track 1, track 2, and so on don't tell you a whole lot. You can rename each track and make it something meaningful by selecting the track label and either renaming it to the person or character who is wearing it, such as Raphael or Maria, or to the type of mic or what the mic is recording, such as shotgun, overhead, or ambient. After you've mapped input signals and renamed tracks, if you have unused tracks, delete them to clean up your workspace. To delete a track, select it, which will make it a different background shade than unselected tracks. Select the multi-track menu, Tracks, and delete selected track. The session should now match the number of input channels on the L8 plus the mix track. Now you're ready to record. First, you need to arm each track for recording by selecting its R button. When you do this, each track's meter will start displaying its current audio level. 2 bars that bounce up and down based on what the microphone is picking up. When the meter goes into the red, audio from that microphone is close to clipping. If the 2 boxes above the meter light up, the audio signal is too high and is likely to sound distorted. This is when you need to adjust the gain dials on the L8 for those channels. To monitor what Audition is recording, select each track's I button for input monitoring to send the track's audio to the L8's channel 7 or 8, whichever channel you designated for USB input when you set up the L8. Remember, if you're monitoring the audio through the L8's master out, master headphones jack, you'll hear a slight delay between the L8's channels and Audition signal to the L8. This is caused by the signal traveling out from the L8 to the computer, and then the computer sending its Audition signal back to the L8. To avoid hearing that echo and monitor only what Audition is recording, use the Monitor Out Mix A headphones jack set to Mix A. Next, select the Record button, which is the red circle in the playback controls underneath the timeline. During recording, Audition shows the recorded waveform in real time as red shaded clips. In Audition, just like in using the L8 as a standalone recorder, you can add markers to the audio file as it's recording, maybe noting where a take starts, where lines are flubbed, or extra noises that you hear that you may want to edit out in the final output. You know, like that pesky lawnmower outside. To add markers during recording, press M on the keyboard and a marker label and number will display on the timeline. When you're done recording, select the Stop button, which is the gray square in the playback controls. Each track then changes to its own respective color. Unlike in the L8, Audition's markers can be moved along the timeline to precise locations. They can also be renamed to something meaningful in the Markers panel, like Take 1, Lawnmower Noise, or AC Turned On. Now would be a good time to save the multi-track session file. Remember, if you're recording simultaneously to the L8's SD card as backup audio, playback controls on the L8 and in Audition are independent of each other. To record on both, you must start recording on both the L8 and in Audition itself. And there you have it. You now know the basics for setting up and using the Zoom LiveTrak L-8 both as a standalone recorder and as a USB interface to record to a DAW. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.